Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me today to talk about, well, kind of more unexpected discoveries that happened to me recently. So let's get started. If you like what you hear today, please leave me a like, tell your friends, and send me a message. First off, happy August. Boy, the time is really flying by this summer, it seems. But, that's a topic for another day. However, I do hope that everyone's been having a really nice summer or winter, depending where you're listening from. So this past weekend was a really good weekend for me. But to be clear, essentially nothing went like I had planned or expected. I went to drop something off at church for a friend and ended up going down to nearby waterfront, what we call the Strand. And I hung out there for about an hour. It wasn't really something I'd planned to do, but just decided to do something different rather than just run an errand and come home. And it was a nice quiet time. And it's always very peaceful down there watching all the sailboats in their berths. And actually, just kind of a side note, it's always pretty rare in my experience to see a sailboat not tied up at the dock. And I think sailboat owners, perhaps more than any other purchaser of large objects and large toys, spend their time not using what they just bought. And so it always looks very pretty. I've been to a number of different marinas and such, and they always look very nice sitting there in nice rows all lined up waiting to be used. And very rarely are they used, it seems. But one of the neat things was when I was down there, as I was getting towards the end, I looked out onto the water, and there was this, what was clearly a pretty skilled and experienced captain bringing in a 41-foot sailboat. Now, you might think 41 feet, how big is 41 feet? It's big. It's, if you're on a powerboat that's 41 feet long, it's a lot of boat to handle. And when you're on a sailboat, you have everything else to deal with at the same time. Granted, he was under motor power, but nonetheless. And so he comes cruising in. It's a creek. It's reasonably wide there. Creek, for those of you not from upstate New York. And but so he was in the creek heading up, and there was another boat tied up in the same dock that he was going to. And he swung it around. It's a 41-foot boat. It doesn't turn on a dime. And he wasn't going fast, but he wasn't going slow either. And had plenty of clearance around the other boat and moved into this small berth. And it looked like he was parking a VW Beetle in a large parking lot. He made it look absolutely effortless. And it was really just simply enjoyable to see someone who didn't just buy a toy to show off, but actually was skilled and enjoyed using it. And his family seemed to be having a good time too. It was a lot of fun to see somebody who invested a lot into something, but was actually using it and not to show off because they really enjoyed it. And it was a very nicely equipped boat as well. And it wasn't with all these show off toys. It didn't have like 6 radars on it or, 5 dinghies hanging off the back, each one more expensive than the other. But it had really functional accessories and safety equipment. So clearly he was very serious about it, and they really used it and enjoyed it. And the whole experience reminded me a lot of what we talk about and teach here. The only thing limiting us really very often is just ourselves. I'm sure he had made, this gentleman who was captaining the boat as I was watching it, I'm sure he's made many decisions thus far in his life, but they appeared at least to have been aligned with his goal of being able to be on his nice sailboat with his family on a Friday during the day and just spending some time together and then coming in and bringing it in to have dinner. And so it was really a very nice start to the weekend because it was somewhat introspective. And I sat and thought about it and thought about the decisions he possibly made in his life. And of course, you're just guessing what somebody else's life is how it happened. But it was very nice to start the weekend off on a really positive note and really encouraged me to focus on my life goals. And so this was still just Friday night. I still had the whole weekend to go after this. And I thought, this is actually a pretty good start. And on Saturday, then, I spent the day taking a credit-bearing course in inductive hearing loop design. Say what? So this is in support of the older members of the church community. And it's totally aligned with my goal. And I try and do it on the website, but it's totally aligned with my goal of trying to make everything possible, ADA, American with Disabilities Act, compliant. And so it's the things why there are ramps into stores and doors that open with assistance and things like ways for people who are hard of hearing to hear things when otherwise they would not. Hearing loops are a technique for broadcasting audio signals directly into compatible hearing aids. Excuse me, so you don't hear all the room echo. Excuse me. This is allergy time. We had a cold front come through. So that's a really simple explanation of it. And also be aware, a little side note, if you're of the situation, and a lot of younger people are getting hearing aids now also, but if you think you need hearing aids and you see all the new over-the-counter hearing aids that are a lot cheaper, be careful, because a lot of those don't have things, they're called T-coils, don't have things to use hearing loops, and don't have a lot of other features that you expect to have in hearing aids. So they're cheaper for a reason. So a little word to the wise, if you're in the market for a hearing aid, make sure that they support things like Bluetooth connection to your phone, and that they support things like hearing loops, so that you can actually use them in things like museums and things like that. But anyway, so in a lot of cases, the cost to install a hearing loop is really not all that huge, but the positive impact it has upon the community or the visitors or whoever are tremendous. And so being hard of hearing is really a big pain. And I'm just, because of hobbies and work and stuff like that, certainly I have hearing loss, but I know a lot of people who are very hard of hearing. And I know that when you get in a situation where there's a lot of echo or whatever, like in a huge room, like in a church, that it really makes it extremely difficult for people to understand everything. And of course, one of the things I always find frustrating on things like this is like a lot of semi-medical things, like hearing aids, for example, where the market segment has limited competition and it's often government funded. And so the prices for basic technology are sky high. And so here you have a thing that would be really useful in a lot of situations, but it's priced so high that a lot of people, even though it's not a super expense, if you're a small business, you probably can't go out and spend the money to do it. And so for that reason, and for a lot of reasons, I was looking into the theory and practice and of how hearing loops work, and actually taking a real course on the design of hearing loops. And, I'm an engineer, and so engineers can do anything eventually, right? If they study enough theoretically. But so it turned out to be a really nice day that way, because I was doing something that was moving me towards my goals. It was something I found intrinsically interesting. Plus, I got a call from another person at church, and I'll talk about that in a second, related to the same project that we're working on, so far as getting better hearing access to the hard of hearing. So on Sunday, I found this other gentleman, I had gotten another assisted hearing device set up, and it's an FM one, like your car radio FM, but a different frequency. And so we have a little transmitter, and it's hooked into the sound system, and then you have to have a little receiver for it and an earplug. And it's okay. It's something special you have to do, as opposed to just telling your hearing aid to listen to the T-coil. And so it's a little harder to use. But, I left one for him to try out, and he did. And he said it worked great. He could hear the sermon for the first time since COVID, because his deafness is COVID related. And so that was super gratifying. And I'm getting ready for stuff. He goes to much earlier mass than I do. And I'm getting ready on the day, and I get this text kind of like, it's working. I can hear. It's kind of like, that was really exciting. But then on Sunday afternoon, I was asked to go and kind of tidy up another church property. And this is all tying together. I know it seems like this random thoughts. But it has to go tidy up another church property, which is being sold by the Archdiocese. I've talked about that before. Honestly, I just wasn't really in the mood, either physically or otherwise. I don't feel like doing this. But I decided, there's no better time, and I should just do it. I was asked to do it. And so I just, went grocery shopping after church, then went home, changed, loaded up the truck, went back down to start doing some landscaping and cleanup. Well, it turns out the people across the street from the church, who I've gotten kind of friendly with, were moving out that very day. It was their last day in the house, and they sold their house. They were super excited, and moving not super far away, but probably about an hour away. And if I hadn't run into them, I wouldn't have seen them before or seen them again. I just would have completely missed them, had no idea where they were going to. And as it turns out, I was sitting there talking to him for a while, and they invited me up to the new house. And the husband and I kind of get along. He's a funny guy. And we sat and talked for a while, because they'd been moving for days. And he really needed someone to talk to who just understood what it was like to have your whole schedule totally blown off and completely disrupted by still be packing things into his car as nightfall came and such. And so, and I forgot to mention, he is 81 and he's hauling truckloads of stuff from this 4-story historic home in downtown, these high ceilings. So it's like almost 2 stories to get to the next floor. And he's just plain needed somebody to talk to. And so I helped them move some things, but I think the bigger thing I did was just distract them both from the situation and allowed him to talk about all sorts of things having nothing to do with moving in houses or anything else. We probably chatted for nearly an hour while working together. And I did get the church property all tidied up and I got some exercise. So it wasn't a bad afternoon, but it was just a really nice change to run into these people and be able to make their day a little better and help them out and basically just show up and have some energy. Because I've been in that situation where you've been working all day and the sun's going down, you still have to unload things when you get home or whatever, and you're just out of energy. And somebody walks in and is kind of, hey, can I help you? Let me get that for you. No, you stay right here. I'll run up and get it upstairs. It's not a problem. And it just re-energizes you. And that's how they both looked. Both he and his wife were just kind of like, wow, we're farther along than we thought. And they just looked relieved to have somebody come in and kind of share their burden with them and make it seem a lot smaller than it seemed a few minutes before. So looking back, I realized again, I had 3 or 4 awesome pick-me-up moments and life lessons, even when each of the days could have just as easily been perceived by myself as drudgery and work. I also got a very good firsthand introspection, as I mentioned before, of the power of goal setting. So overall, it was really quite a powerful and fun weekend. I was able to wish the older couple a happy return to be closer to the family, which is why they're moving, as well as cheer them up, like I said, and bring some fresh energy into the day for them. And I got a bunch of physical workout myself, which I always need, and it made my own work considerably easier because I had stuff to do, and I thought, well, I should just hustle through this and get back and see if they need anything. And Saturday, that wasn't work at all. It was a long day. It was 7 hours of study, but I was excited for what I was doing because of the reason I was doing it. And I think it's really important to remember that life isn't full of amazing events with big banners and signs and flashing lights or whatever saying, look here for the answer, look here for something neat. But life is full of amazing events hidden right in plain sight if you take the time and open up your life so that you'll be able to let them find you. I had 3 major positive events this weekend, along with a number of smaller nice ones, because I just went slightly out of my comfort zone. I very easily could have grumped through the whole weekend and missed everything. We even done those things and we just done them with a bad attitude, and I probably would have missed most of the good stuff, if not all of it. But as we talked about last week, that's really the point, isn't it? If we open ourselves up to life, life has a way of giving us gifts in return. And the best gifts often aren't the biggest gifts. Chances are, you've had one, perhaps a few situations where someone was really trying to make you happy or feel special. Perhaps they did something totally over the top, like maybe they got you a car or a fancy piece of jewelry. And yet the part of that day that you really remember may be some other part, something totally different. Maybe you're walking out the house, on the way to the surprise, and they picked up a little flower out of the lawn and told you they loved you, or just held the door for you and winked when you walked by. Big and amazing things don't have to be obvious. And more often than not, it's really the unobvious that has the deeper meaning. It's the core of mindfulness. It's just being open to being aware of all the things that are around you. As you're walking to your appointment, trying not to be late, and you're thinking, which is the fastest way across the sidewalk and everything else. If you just step back for a second, you're still able to notice the flowers or the nicely kept building, even with your hectic day. Maybe actually if the person who's cleaning the building, as you walk by, you just smile and say, this place looks really beautiful, thanks. Now you've made them happy too. These little things can bring you just a moment of joy, a little smile, and that can be the start of changing the rest of your day for the better, and maybe improving some other person's day just as well. Your homework, always optional, of course, is to think of some tasks you had to do, or perhaps, maybe you didn't do them, or you did them and you were unhappy the entire time. Now, imagine if you'd done them with a more positive attitude. Do you think you would have felt better? Instead of finally being done, maybe you could be excited about how much nicer something looked, or that you had a difficult conversation that was behind you now and something was resolved. And extra points, of course, if you can revisit that situation in your mind and imagine, since we can never know what might have happened, but just imagine some of the things that might have occurred if you just worked with a smile on your face and a positive attitude, a kind word for everyone that you met. These things can make a huge difference both in your attitude and in the attitude of everyone around you. And they can take a situation that maybe is just uninteresting or maybe really distasteful and turn it into something that's either good or tolerable, or at least something that you feel good about completing. So that's it for the evening. As always, please remember the war in Ukraine. It is just really bad, and there's just no other way around it. So if you can and you're able, please, UKR7 has a link to many people. United 24 is another big Ukraine organization, World Central Kitchen, WCK.org. Lots of ways to give there or elsewhere in the world. There's a lot of people who just generally need help. This isn't, and some people say, well, I just can't go around helping everybody all the time. It doesn't always have to be giving money to people. Sometimes they just need help, like we talked about a couple seconds ago. You see somebody's looking a little down as they sit there, they're doing their menial job, walk by and say, wow, this place looks really nice. That's helping somebody too. And if you can find the time, find the opportunity, whether it's giving something to the people in Ukraine, giving something to some other place that needs assistance, or just bringing a moment of joy into somebody's life. As we talk about often, one of the best ways to care for yourself is to care for others. When you look outside your own life, then it really changes your perspective on the world. So, as always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting or useful, please pass it along. Please hit that like button. And if not, please drop me a comment as to what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.